With me today is Larry Johnson, Chief of Staff and the Executive Director of Public Schools and Safety, Chief Eric Payne, and Captain Jeff Collard from the Grand Rapids Police Department to share tips and their thoughts on back-to-school safety. I also want to recognize our President of the Grand Rapids Board of Education, Ms. Jen Shockey. Before I turn it over, I want to remind everyone that universal masks are required for indoors for all students, staff, and visitors pre-K through 12 through all of our schools, regardless of your vaccination status. And I'd like to turn it over to our Chief of Staff and Head of Public Safety, Larry Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Roby, and thank all of you for joining us today. Board President Gene Shockey, Chief Payne, and Captain Collier from the Police Department. Just want to give a thanks and a shout out to our public safety staff who typically would join us on a morning like this, but right now they're with Dean's Transportation. They're out at athletic fields and they're even driving some routes now to make sure that our students are going to get to school safe. As I was driving in this morning, I noticed the increased amount of traffic on the road. So that's an early indication to me that schools are open. I saw kids from other districts already moving through our community as they go to school. So we wanted to take this opportunity just to remind everyone that school's open. And as I put my teaching hat on now, just to talk about some school safety tips for our parents, for our students, and for this entire community. The main message here is to slow down. Slow down, obey the flashing red signs on the buses, and just remember we have a lot of excited young people who are very interested in going back to school and who will not be paying attention as they cross streets. Our crossing guards have been trained. The police department have those individuals out and stationed at various checkpoints throughout the city. With younger kids, we want to remind them to use the school crosswalks and to cross at the corners. We want to encourage our parents just to do a dry walk with them today sometime to ensure that your students are crossing at the right locations. We want to remind our high school students, although you sometimes like to take a shortcut and walk in the middle of the street, we want to get you back up on the sidewalks, and because our drivers are not prepared for you right now. We want to identify bus stop locations and make sure that our bus stop locations are not only secure, but they've been cleared of debris and the bushes have been trimmed around those bus stops. So our reach is to the community as well this morning to assure that as our kids prepare to come back to school, that from a crime prevention through environmental design standpoint, that we're cutting bushes and we're making sure that our young tykes can be seen as they approach the corners. For our bike riders, we want to make sure that they're staying in the bike lanes and riding, if you're going to ride a bike to school, making sure you have a helmet on. So there's a lot of preparation that our parents can do before those kids leave for school. Remember, our kids are leaving early in the morning, so bright colors are so important as we retrain our driving community on how to be aware of our students, being aware of our surroundings, our community, being aware of suspicious vehicles that hang out around our schools and reporting that information to the Grand Rapids Police Department. Being aware of school zones, and for me, I say if the speed limit is 25, back that down to about 15. Just take into account that we have a lot of young kids that are moving around our communities. We have over 15,000 kids that will be moving around from Grand Rapids, but there are other school districts in the city limits of Grand Rapids where young kids will be moving around as well. Again, remember the speed limits, but more importantly, remember that our kids are excited to come back to school. They have not, this type of opening has not occurred in almost 2 years. So there's added excitement around coming to school. I'm excited. I know our superintendent and board president is excited, and I know the police department is excited now because now they turn the babies back over to us for at least 8 to 10 hours a day. But we want to keep them safe. We want to keep our kids safe. We want to make sure that as they travel to and from school, from porch to the portal of the school and back home again, that they get there safely. I want to now turn it over to a good friend of ours and absolutely supporters of the Grand Rapids Public Schools, Captain Jeff Collard and Chief Eric Payne, who will have a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, Superintendent, Board President. Appreciate being here. It seems like we were just meeting at the end of the school year not too long ago. But Mr. Johnson is correct. We're excited about the school year getting started. Kids getting back to our new normal. Just want to talk a little bit about what Mr. Johnson talked about obeying the laws, especially around schools. Safety is our number one priority. I want to have another year where kids have been able to go to school and feel safe while they're at school, but also getting there. We have a great partnership with GRPS, which has already been talked about, and that will continue. We talk constantly about things going on in the city and also things that could affect the school. So we will continue that partnership, and we look forward to it. My captain's Captain Collard. He's in charge of the west side. The other captains are a little busy today. They couldn't make it, but we have a great relationship with Mr. Johnson, and we talk constantly about things that are going on. We do have that crossing guard program that we as a police department is mandated by the state to oversee. We take that responsibility seriously. We want to make sure kids are crossing and getting to school in a safe manner. We will continue to collaborate with our other city departments, traffic safety, engineering, and making sure, as mentioned, CEPTEV is up, crime prevention through environmental design. We're here to do whatever we can to make sure kids feel safe and are safe in our community and are able to get back to school. Thank you for the time. Turn it back over.
That's it. You can open up for questions.
Questions?
When it comes to adjustments and when it comes to COVID protocols as it relates to sports, what are the protocols when it comes to like if an athlete becomes positive, what happens from there, and then what happens to that team in large?
So we will be following the guidelines that have been set forward by Kent County Health Department. In addition to that, we have mitigation efforts where we're asking young people to wear masks when they're not on the field of play. And we have a COVID-19 handbook that we have made available for both students, staff, and family members.
And when it comes to like some schools may not have like air conditioning, like the masks on, really expect the rise of the midnight on this is there a plan in place for that as far as, the safety of the kids? Are you a little concerned that maybe they may get overheated or anything of that nature?
Sure. And in all of our buildings, we have other, opening of windows, of course. We have fans available. In addition to that, we have HVAC structures that we've put in place over the last year. And Mr. Johnson can talk more specifically about what those measures are to keep kids from having the rooms be uncomfortable.
Would you like consider maybe doing like I think Genesee County is doing like a half day in those types of situations? Would you consider something like that, or is it just we're open? We're going to do the best
We are
can with what we got?
planning on being open 100% all day, and we'll take that under advisement if the buildings become too warm, of course, and then also we'll have water available so that people will be able to kind of refresh themselves and keep cool that way as well.
When it comes to school buses and a bunch of kids floating in and out throughout the day, what measures are put there for safety?
So students will have assigned seats, as well as everybody is mandated to wear a mask when they enter the bus. That is a federal law, and so we'll have that in place as well so that we're able to kind of know who sits where on the bus, and then in addition to that, they'll be wearing masks, and the drivers are equipped to give masks if students don't have them when they arrive to the bus stop.
And the buses are sanitized in between every run as well.
Another question for me: what are the staffing levels like here at GRPS? Is that something that still needs to be addressed, or did you guys kind of fill those positions? I know earlier that was like a big deal to try to get over 200 positions filled.
Just before the start of school, of course, there's always a lot of movement that takes place with staff, and we have addressed a lot of our staffing needs. There's some shortage areas in those high priority areas around special education, math, and sciences, and so that's always an area that we're trying to address and make it more appealing to come to our district. And so we are looking at that. Every classroom will have a teacher. It might be a substitute or a long call sub for the beginning of the year, but we are working, our HR department is working very hard to fill those positions. We've done a couple of job fairs, and we'll continue to do some of those things between now until those positions are filled.
And one last question for me: can you speak to like the emotional aspect of being an administrator when you're trying to balance like keeping kids safe, but also understanding that some parents are not going to agree with the way that you want to keep these children safe? How is that just kind of weighed on you in this district?
Oh, wow. Up and down. And so I think, from a very human side, I always want to make the right decision by children and by my staff and their families. Of course, as everybody knows, that this is not always very popular when you are making decisions for the whole, but we're trying to do the right work, and we also are making sure that we are using data to inform our practices. So it's not just around kind of the human emotion side. It's like, what does our data say? What does our community data say? I'm excited to report that last year when we did come back in person, we had very, very few instances where we were able to trace contact trace from one student or one person to another within our school. So I'm very pleased with that. And part of that was because we all wore masks. So to answer your question, the long and short of it, it can sometimes be an emotional roller coaster, but I think it's important to be very grounded and to make sure that I always assume the positive in people and want to, how do we do things as a community? Because this is not just my effort, it's the community's effort, as you can see with our community partners, with our board members, our staff, and then our broader community.
And with the Delta variant, being this new thing that's coming out, are there sleepless nights? Are you like, okay, here we go, we're getting ready to start school, but then I'm concerned that, we may have an outbreak and have to shut, things down again?
And yes, to answer that question, there are some nights where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But I think, again, we have a very solid plan, and we review our plan daily, and we make adjustments based on the information that we have. And so it's iterative. So we make sure that we continue to talk with staff, we continue to talk with our health department, we continue to talk with other leaders across the across the city to find out what they're doing, and we share ideas back and forth, which makes a huge difference because, again, this is an experience for our entire community and our entire nation, and we are looking to see best practices, what people are doing well, and also learning from those things that people have not done as well and say, we probably don't want to do that here. Sure. Other questions? All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Someone's phone is still on. Let's move away from these hot mics.
Total buildings, well, I guess I want to, what's